Okay, guys, we have 3 chairs. Let's all come up here.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
You gonna start this, Ron? or-
Nope. I'll defer.
Okay. Morning.
Good morning. I wanted to give you the handout. Obviously, this is just a preliminary. We're trying to give you an overview. Now that the facility has been, over this weekend, being utilized and repurposed, if you will, the present areas such as Max have been turned over for the doors to be repaired, and those are all the cell doors and all the security
It's
doors.
the
out
old
there.
section?
The old, what was called old Max, the
Yeah.
old Maximum. And those certain inmates have been moved to what is the female pod, and for certain security reasons, and CM5 and 6, or D5 and D6, sorry, are remain populated, but the work towards getting everything retrofitted is ongoing, specifically the doors. That's what they need to get hold of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So, that work and other wiring, especially as you know, right now we have 2 different control. We don't have all the cameras on one control module, so the Packard controls and Spielman are running the wire to take the old analog cameras onto the new digital camera system,
Right.
which will, and then the females are in the new area, or GL2 as we refer to it,
Okay.
GL1 and GL2. So with that kind of opening and context, I just wanted to give the Board of Commissioners for the sheriff an overview of what he feels is in the best interest of the county, to protect the county and carry out his mandates to preserve the peace, transport people to and from the courts, operate the jail, serve writs, warrants, criminal and civil, and to protect the courts. So those 5 duties. And the one thing we really request is that I tried to lay this out in this fashion. Not that we expect, that this is what we want to show you, what we feel through through the sheriff, the chief, and Major Lindbergh, what they feel is needed for the duties, the areas that they run. So, as we get close to the budget period, toward the end of this year, November and so on, we'd like to go over it in this manner and present it and give you the figures that flow into these numbers. Absolutely, Sheriff.
The other thing that, when we put this together, we wanted to give you some idea of what might be off in the future.
Right.
I've got another 400 and some days in office, and there'll be a new administration there. We kind of wanted to paint a picture of, what's off in the future with issues that are out there with personnel, the new facility being opened and so forth. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay.
I just wanted to.
And that's what this is really geared toward. This is geared toward, basically the fully functioning jail and all of the duties that the sheriff has to do, carry out through his mandated duties. So as far as the detective bureau, there is, I'll just go right down, obviously there is no supervisor for the detective bureau at this time, a dedicated supervisor. Right now there are 6 individuals, but those 6 do everything from transport to do road patrol to do security for the as we had with the Burgers Court with a high-risk individual. All 6 people were needed for that hearing alone. We had to dedicate, because we had information that as he was being transported from Cuyahoga Juvenile Facility down here, there's always a risk of a interdiction by his friends. And so we had to be very cognizant and protect the perimeter and protect the car as it came in. So that was an all-day, that was 6 people dedicated to that one hearing all day, back and forth to Cuyahoga County. Judge Berg did not want him staying in the juvenile detention center here. So things like that, that's our entire detective bureau. Nothing detective work gets done. That was protection. And we can't pull the guys from the road to do that. And for certain reasons, we don't want marked cars doing that. We want unmarked cars. So as you can see, there's an open position supervisor. Present, Larry felt that 8 detectives and dedicated, and these are crimes such as murder, rape, aggravated, serious, violent crimes, complex financial crimes, things of that nature. So, and we have we don't have a person that can do transcription, clerical, and it costs a lot of money to send that out. And we tape, there's a lot of taping of statements and confessions and so on, and that's awfully important to have that support. We have 1 arson sex offender.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
The 4 additional, are any of those currently budgeted vacancies? If you guys could point that out as
The only budgeted that's still there would be the supervisor, Greg, who just,
So it's
we're
3
budgeted there.
3 more on
Right, you would have.
top of what you normally
Right,
have.
we
Is
just
that
don't
right?
have the body to put in the supervisor
Yeah.
position.
If you, as you go, if you could just point out whether it's a budgeted vacancy or not budgeted, that'd be great.
Sure. And please, if I don't, remind me. Okay, so Job and Family Services, that's Marcia and Albie, and they do a great job there. And most of their salary gets picked up by Job and Family Services. Then we,
Most or all?
pardon me?
Most or all?
It's,
You have a mandated match.
yeah, we have a
Okay.
mandated match. There's some costs to the department that aren't picked up, such as, the vehicle use and so on that's not transferred over.
Okay.
But other than that, it's a match. The Civil Warrant Division, we have Sue Hilligus, who has 1, and she, it's just, there's just no way that anybody can keep track of all the civil.
So you need 3 there, Pete? I mean, you've
No,
got 2
no, present, we need additional staffing, 2 full-time dedicated to civil warrants.
Are those numbers backwards? Yeah.
They might be backwards,
Okay,
I'm
you know what, I
sorry.
think they must
And I
be,
might have
isn't
done, I was working on this late, and so
Yeah, okay.
there's other places where I switched them, so
Yeah,
I
okay.
apologize. I tried to catch them. There's another one coming up that I switched in dispatch. Okay, this is a real problem for the criminal warrant. We have over 2,000 criminal warrants that need to be served. We
I've heard
have-
about those from phone calls.
Yes. I'll bet you have.
I have.
We have not had the staff, we have not had the room in the jail. Understand, when we serve these criminal warrants, that will be a body coming to the jail, staying in the jail, setting up a time for that person to appear before the court as to answer for the warrant that was issued. And that's manpower intensive. So not only do we really not have the space to do this until the new facility opens up fully, we just don't have the manpower to go serve those. And so according to Major Limbert, as with civil warrants, we're gonna have to have 2 dedicated people to do that. Evidence right now, we have total 1 person. We have Dave Kennedy and part-time Rich Rogers. And we are working off a backlog of, Sheriff, how many guns would you say? I mean, it's just years. We are working, and these guns were taken for whatever reason, and because of the Henderson case, we have to give if the guns were part of the crime, we can destroy the guns, okay? If the guns were taken on a pink slip type basis, or even if they have a criminal record, then we're obligated to notify the owner, even though they have a criminal record, and give that person the opportunity to have a property interest in those weapons. Not the ownership of the weapon, but the property interest. So let's say we have $1,000 worth of guns. They have a right to have a hearing that, under the law, that can be given to a responsible third party or sold to a gun dealer. And they can get the property interest, $1,000 to themselves, returned to themselves. So there's a gun ownership Second Amendment issue and a property interest issue that the courts say we must recognize and give them. And so these issues, we're working through that, and we're working with the courts, and we're going to have a hearing where they'll all be called and say, okay, you have a Henderson issue. And some of these people will notify. After we notify them, they don't claim the weapons, and then we destroy them. So, but I mean, the area, physical area is about as big as this room of the weapons.
Wow.
Half of this half room. So, as to the cases and who they belong to, so on and so forth. And so it's a lot. And then we have retention periods as long as 30 years with biological evidence, as well as ours is 10 years. So he is basically, we're working with a backlog of about 20 years of evidence to get that up to speed. Okay, road patrol supervisors, we're at 12-hour shifts. Larry, we have 2 lieutenants at this point in time. A third lieutenant, he said at least would be required to cover when those individuals are on vacation, on leave, or what have you. So then going forward, road patrol, the difficulty with part-time on that is under the CBA. So according to Larry, for the 500 plus square miles, requested is 35, we have 29. And that breaks down with the 12-hour shifts, you know, that they are, they work 80 hours in 2 weeks. So they work 7 12s and 1 8.
6 12.
6 12, sorry. 6 12s and 1 8, okay, through that 14-day period. So they're staggered, so when they're off those days, somebody has to cover for them on individuals, so they're all staggered at this point. And I forgot to put in how many we have out on, we have a couple out on medical leave. And I can get you that figure. But those are the figures according to Major Lumber. The patrol cars we have, and Todd, you may be able to speak to this, but right now we have 13, and based upon his experience with Major Limbert's, the rotation of those vehicles, those are basically used 24/7. And they are the average, they are all up in mileage and use. Courthouse security, we have a supervisor. Gary does a great job. And right now, we have 7 part-time, 10 full-time, 6 part-time is what Larry felt, to cover all of the duties of all the courts. As you're aware, corrections officers, we've talked about this. This is consistent with our prior discussions. So the jail, the operations of the jail, as I mentioned real quickly, the operations, if you would go there, if you've gone there last week and then come there this week, it's all changed around, repurposed, if you will, is what I like to say. And as we go through that and get our we're gonna have the opportunity with this repurposing of actually having the ability to have a real maximum security and not a maximum security that also houses behavioral issues, okay? That is not a true max. Those behavioral issues should not be in there with those maximum security
Or
individuals.
suicide watch.
Or suicide, what, right? I mean, we're also trying to repurpose the booking area is one of the most dangerous and busy, and we are trying to limit that risk, that threat that we know is in that booking area. And we're, in the future, going to be hopefully instituting some things to really limit the traffic, minimize that threat that's in the booking area. That's with everything that goes on. People coming in, people being released, people on suicide watch, that's all in the booking area.
Right.
You can't even hear yourself sometimes in there.
You know, Pete, you named 3 different, like suicide watch, max, and then behavioral problems, and then there's a general population.
Yes, I haven't even,
Yes.
haven't even mentioned the general population. Okay,
Now,
transport.
these cars aren't, how many cars are we budgeted for?
Well,
We
there's-
came up on the number of 23, I know, a couple years ago. I don't know, is that number not a good number
23 was the
anymore?
plan. We currently have 24 on our list. We've been trying to reach out to Dale to figure out where those 11 are, between maintenance and fueling and all that type of thing. We haven't gotten answers yet on that, but our goal was to keep 23
Okay, so
active.
that's what's budgeted, 23 are budgeted.
Yeah, yeah. Pete, on the correction officers, that's 16, that is not on top of the 15 that have already been budgeted.
No, that includes.
That includes those, so
That
just
includes.
one more on top of what's been budgeted for
Yep.
that group.
Well, because of it's like 15 point something,
Yeah.
so I can't
We can't
get
do
a
that
1/3 of a
point.
body.
We don't know where we would find that
Right.
person, huh?
We can't find 2/3 of a body, so I rounded up. Okay, transports. Obviously, this is something that is very important because these individuals take inmates to prisons, to hospitals, other places outside the facility. And we need deputies to do that. COs cannot do that. And so we really need 2 dedicated per day and afternoon shift to do that. And so the minimum, through this period, our minimum staffing has gone up through this transition period because of moving inmates and everything that's involved in repurposing. So this is something that we just don't have, and it's very important. Because then it takes away from the minimum staffing, which creates a risk in the jail. The drug task force, presently there are.
Can I ask, real
Yeah.
on the transport, the
Yep.
prison transport,
Mm-hmm.
what is, I assume that doesn't include the guard type duty that hospital transport
It
does?
does, it does, yes,
How
it-
does that, just, can you explain that? The hospital is,
Bec-
makes sense to me, but prison,
Think of it like this, the COs are not armed, the deputies are armed, and in order to be with the inmate at the hospital, they have to be a full deputy and to be able to transport these individuals.
what about to transport to prison?
Same,
Same thing.
Same thing.
You have to be a commissioned
they have to
deputy.
be commissioned deputy.
But is the drop off something that happens quickly, or does that take their time?
It takes, well, you may, say you go to a
At
prison or go to pick up somebody, then you may end up waiting by the time they get them ready. We may go to Rain, which you're gonna be picking up a couple or depositing a couple. And so you're going to be on the road almost all the time.
Sometimes it's faster than others.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on there. We could get there and they could be in a lockdown for some reason. We could get delayed.
Right.
Sometimes it's you go there, drop them off, turn right around and come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, some days, and that also includes a court transportation, okay? So Court is a, local courts, that's a big, you know,
Jail to court.
that is a
Yeah.
big duty. Because when we bring them back in, they all have to be processed again, they have to all go through the scanner. And as if they're coming into the jail,
Right.
right from the outside. Yeah, we can't risk anything being brought in. So, Kathleen, does that? Okay.
Thank you.
The Dead Drug Task Force, we've lost our, if you want to say, sponsorship by our ICE task force. We have presently two, actually, that really should be one because Lincoln is now no longer an ICE. He was the ICE, so that's a mistake. So you have, the way it works is the task force officers are assigned and they are what are called task force officers, TFOs. And their overtime is then paid by the sponsoring federal agency, FBI, DEA, ATF, Marshals, etc. So that's the benefit of having a sponsorship. It also gives the task force access to the intelligence that those agencies have, and they have to go through their protocols and so on. So for the county of this size, those are important positions and important access to information that gives us through the FTOs.
Is it 2 or 3 then unbudgeted vacancies?
It would be, what we've got is, that really should be 1 because Lincoln is no longer under the ICE sponsorship, so that'd be 3.
Okay,
3
so
that are
the 2 should be
unbudgeted.
1
It
on
should be
that.
1, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And are those paid for out of the drug task force, or do they not have the funds for those 3?
Drug Task Force, understand the important thing to keep in mind about the Drug Task Force is the forfeitures that are taken in by.
That's what I'm asking, does the fund have the capacity to hire these 3, or you're saying these should be general fund?
Yeah, these, because understand that the Drug Task Force monies do not belong to the county or even to the sheriff. They belong to the board that makes up the local police departments, such as, it would be, Suffield, Brimfield, if they give an officer, Aurora, Kent, Ravenna, then those monies belong to the task force board, and those monies are distributed, let's say equally or however the board decides, back to the respective participating agencies. So let's just say that the board decides to buy with the task force monies, a van outfitted for surveillance, okay? And that costs, let's say $20,000. Those forfeiture funds will be used in a vote by the board for such an asset that can be used by the task force and the county. So that's how those funds go. And they have to be distributed in that manner, so.
So do like the cities and townships, whatever that have police, do they come before the board and make requests?
Make requests,
Okay.
exactly right, yep. Yes, they do. Okay, and so that is, I switched those numbers, I'm not there yet, sorry. So the task force, I want to correct that number. So that's how that works. But the task force officer's overtime is directly paid by the sponsoring agency. Okay. Dispatch, this is similar to, this is basically the same request from last year. 11 full-time, and Larry and Jim, 12 full-time, 4 part-time is what they feel is needed.
Do you have the 4 part-time, or do you not?
We don't.
You only have, so those numbers are all switched?
Yeah, those are switched. First of all, they're in the wrong column.
And for the 4 part-time, are we talking 32-hour, 20-hour?
I'd say more in the 20-hour category.
So it's like maybe 2 full-time equivalent there?
Something like that, yep. And then the last thing I have is the funding for training. Training is, there's one suit going on right now against the county, Turner v. Mark Turner v. The county, basically, and various people. And these cases come up. The things that are attacked always in these cases are the training, the individual the training of the officers that are involved in the incident. I know the sheriff just testified yesterday in, what's his name? In Pittman's court. In
Caston, I think it was.
it was one where the individual used his car to almost run over the officers, ran into their cars and so on. And in the legal arena, such as in the case, it's now, the Turner case involved having to taser an individual who was hurting himself. They had to take him down and put him in a restraint chair. Fairly big fella. And he was, at the very least, very intoxicated. And he is sued, and not only sued, but has alleged unconstitutional use of force. And so the main thing that is always attacked in these cases is what is the training of the individuals. And I'll let the sheriff talk about what training we have or haven't had in the last several years.
Yeah, there has been a lack of it, and from a liability standpoint,
Sure.
because of, every time I look in my computer, I see things on there for free training. Training is not free. When we take somebody away from what they're doing
Right.
and send them somewhere for any type of training, there's a cost involved in that. However, that said, particularly, it's been noticeable to me in opening the new facility. There are training issues out there that could be liability for the county, and I want to minimize all of that. Additionally, the road deputies need continual training, and there's a number of ways that can be accomplished, but it does take away from the manpower, and you send somebody for training, and we need to upgrade that training.
What we would request is 1 day a quarter, say for the deputies, and that involves firearms, dynamic scenarios, and also legal review and updates, okay? And that involves what we call the use of force continuum, escalating, de-escalating, and that comes with the scenario training, to put the officers under stress, but yet in a safe environment so that they can rely on that when they're out in the field. Shoot and don't shoot situations, proper uses of force and de-escalation and then escalation. So that's, if you look at the last page 6, I kind of list some of that under deputies. Same for corrections officers, except with the emphasis is not on lethal force, it's on non-lethal force, the application of non-lethal force. Obviously, sometimes there is lethal force, but it's very rare, very rare. And then dispatch, again, stressing these employees, and I'll tell you, the training that Pace has put on, I mean, these officers love it, and they take to it literally like a sponge, and because they know that they need it, and they may need it when things really go south. And the same for dispatch. Dispatch is where everything starts. A call comes in. That may be a very, very stressful call for that individual. And not only legal updates, but also dealing with some training for post-handling of the call. Dispatchers can become very stressed handling the call, especially if it deals with, say, babies or things of that nature.
Plus the medical emergency.
In the medical emergencies, absolutely, that's right, the stressful nature of the work. And then other issues I've got, we just had, you know, we have a lot of maintenance issues at the jail. The jail one. And I know there's been some talk about assigning at least a maintenance person there. We didn't have any problem with toilets last night, did we?
No,
Luckily.
we made it through.
We made it through. But, yeah, I mean, we have inmates. The inmates will try to do everything they can. They will try to plug up toilets. We have, you know, the water catches to cut off water to a certain place, especially in the max behavioral area. And so we have these things come up all the time. The condition, I don't think I have to tell the board much about the condition of the hot water pipes in that facility. Sooner or later, we are gonna have a big problem. They're gonna break, they're going to go. And we believe that is because of the condition of the water and of more specifically, what we see as the grinding and abrasiveness inside the pipes. And some of these pipes, you can almost squeeze with your fingers. And this is gonna, if we have hot water problem in the jail, then the natives get restless, the inmates don't have hot water, and it becomes a real security issue. And they're finding that now by trying to put in the valves.
Shutoffs.
Valves, the shutoff valves. Those pipes are not they're 30 years old.
Is that on the list to be repaired, Joanne, the pipes? I mean,
Not all of them.
Not through all of the
Jail one.
renovated areas
Right,
now.
Right.
We have, or Shannon's working with our plumbing company to get some information now on trying to get those things taken care of before we button everything back up on that side, because we know maintenance is out there all the time with those kind of things coming up. So we're trying to do that as part of,
okay.
not part of the big picture, but we're gonna
Right.
try to do it to get it done, so that when we're all renovated, we're hopefully in a good spot, and
Okay.
everything will be taken care of.
So it's on our radar.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, yep, yep.
Now, are you asking for one maintenance personnel, two? What are you
Well,
asking?
right now, it just is catch as catch can out there.
Yeah,
We, certainly busy time is, you know, during the day of, you know, 8 to 4, 7 to 4, during the operating hours. Then there's the afternoon, and at least we would think to start off with one person dedicated there to take care of these issues that come up. And we can see how it goes. But they just took a fan that had not been working in the men's room, that hadn't been working, you know, for years, and it was taken out. And actually, it was pretty much jerry-rigged. It was not to code. It wasn't big enough, and actually wasn't pulling. It was actually blowing. So it was reversed. And these things come up all the time.
Pete had also suggested, so that you were aware, that I think contractually, we need to look at a contract with the folks who are installing the jail doors
Yes.
and make sure that those are maintained properly with, there's a special lubricant that we talked about in one of the maintenance meetings. And if those aren't lubed with a particular lubricant and checked occasionally, we're gonna run into this issue again with the doors.
What we would like to do is after the facility is done and there's a couple of contractors who do this. Pauly Jail is the company that has a contract to repair the doors, the electronics and the mechanics. But what we feel, so we never have to deal with this threat again, is to have those doors maintenance.
Preventive
Certainly
maintenance.
preventive maintenance, at the very least once a quarter, once a month. And that's what you have to do. They are mechanical, they're like a vehicle, they open, close thousands of times a day.
And we had that originally with the original providers of when the jail was built in '92, except those companies went out of business. And then the next thing, they sent someone else in, and those people did their rendition of what that was supposed to be. So they're absolutely correct. The best thing for us to do is have a maintenance agreements on those kinds of
Right.
things to take care of it. And I think that's why we got at least a few years out of them back in '95 when we opened the jail, you know. But like I said, those companies went out of business, and then it was downhill from there.
Now, we're talking about the doors in jail 1 and jail 2, all the doors.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Have the
yep.
entire
Yep.
cell
That's
and
what I-
security doors. They must be looked at, maintained, because that is such a threat to the liability of the county.
Oh, sure.
I mean, if something happens to a CO or an inmate because of a door not working, and we know the door doesn't work, we're in big trouble.
Now, are the doors the same, are they going to be the same after?
No,
So we're gonna need 2 contracts with different?
No, the doors, certain doors are being taken out. Sliders are being, think of them as louvered doors, okay? Some are being replaced, but the cell doors, many of the cell doors, the mechanics and the electrical are just being, repurposed.
Redone, okay.
Repurposed. Those doors are not going to be necessarily replaced.
Okay.
Some aren't, depending upon
Depending on the
location.
condition.
Right, right.
They all should be fully functional.
Absolutely.
Under the new control system and everything, once we're done.
Okay.
So everything, understand, everything we're gonna start referring to, master control is the new
Central
section
control.
that you saw in what is now the new jail or jail 2. The central will be what's up front and for jail 1, but all of the controls, the electronics, that will move to the master control.
So central control is not the
When
same
the
thing
project's
as master,
completed.
okay.
Right, and right now, we don't have that luxury. We have control out of both at this point. So,
There was some misunderstanding, perhaps on my part. I assumed that once we moved into the new facility and took over jail 2, that all the controls would be switched to the master control in jail 2. They're not able to do that until they get finished with the rest of the project, so now.
It's the last thing they're gonna do, is that it?
For a period of time.
I'm sorry?
Is that
They
the
will
last
all be
thing they're gonna
changed over.
address?
what you want to understand, that when we came to know this problem, we sat down with Granger and we said, okay, in the second phase, you have to reprogram or reorder your work to get to these doors first. That has got to be the top priority. So they worked with us to get that as much as they could reordered so that those doors are the first thing. Now, to do that, they have to run new cabling because you have, in some respects, and like this week, new lines are gonna be, well, the lines have already been run. We have to connect for the video visitations that are coming in. And that's gonna be put in the visitation area and also in all the pods. So you'll have regular phones and basically computer modules that they will be able to visit remotely from, okay? So that work is being done. So that will also assist with the movement or lack of, or reduce movement of inmates in the, throughout the, because you've got a big area between the 2 jails now coming down, would have to be coming down to visitation, a physical visitation. They can visit remotely from those locations. So that's a plus. One thing I was working on this late, and I forgot to put it in here, but one thing the county should really, it's a threat to the institution, to the jail, is we have people coming in there for CCW licenses. No one's supposed to come in there armed, but that vestibule area, the common area where you enter. We have funds through the CCW fund that can be used. It's allowed for the protection of the CCW area. And we would like to say, to work with the board to use that to buy a metal detector and to post a part-time deputy, use part-time deputies for security to that facility.
Okay, so as you come in the doors.
Absolutely.
yeah.
In fact, some of it we would like to, so when you put a machine like that, you have to restrict access to the side. You have to bring everybody through that point, okay? So some construction would have to be done, but the physical, we want to work with the board to put one in there for the safety of all of the administrative people, and also put in bulletproof glass, at least at the administration and the CCW windows. Because someone can still make entry but still be a threat. So.
Is there enough money there, Pete, to do that?
I believe that I just started looking into the CCW fund to look into purchasing. And so what I didn't put in here is the staffing of part-time deputies. And that would be during operation hours, okay? Even in, possibly till maybe 8 o'clock at night, we would shut it down at some point in time, okay? We want to repurpose the entry into that, and if people come there and they have questions, they can talk on the phone outside, the doors will be locked, and someone can help them from that, come out and help them. But we really have to limit that threat, because it is a real threat to the people who work there. So that was the last thing that I wanted to.
I counted it up, and it looks like we're asking for 40 additional personnel. Of those 40, how many are budgeted now?
That I will have to go back and give you, look at that. I did not have time, and I wish I did, to give you that answer. Like, as we talked about now, let's talk, the two, just real easy, the task force guys, okay?
I just want to say, I added it up and it was closer to 60.
Additional?
Right.
Additional.
Right. Unless, the question I had on the
We can walk through it, right,
correction
real quick.
officers,
Two,
the 71,
that's, because you've got 5 additional posts, which you have to use a factor.
no, I understand.
Okay.
I'm just, what captures the additional
I mean, what duties,
That would be
posts?
16.
funding that
That would be
we
6, that's right.
16
discussed
additional.
earlier in the year? The funding that was
That's
approved.
what I'm asking.
Okay, so
Between
those are
55
funded,
and-
right,
Yeah.
you
So
provided
all
funds.
16 were
Yes, I
funded.
would
Okay.
say that
Well, that's
those are
what-
funded.
yeah, okay.
So
Okay,
for the 71,
those, you provided the $500,000 for those funds, for those,
take that, then strike what I said, it would be closer to 40 additional positions.
so I'll walk you through this real
Requested.
quick.
Okay.
Two,
26 additional?
Because the cars, you might have counted the cars.
Oh,
Well, I didn't
that's
count the
it.
cars.
Oh, don't count the
I
cars.
must have added that
Yeah,
in,
that's an
I'm
extra
sorry.
15 that should be.
Yeah, I think it was 20, I was surprised when you said that, I didn't realize it was at 40.
26 plus a maintenance plus the part-time,
Yeah,
which you're saying from 8 to 8?
which one are you talking about, Todd, I'm sorry.
For the, not in here,
The vestibule,
guard.
the last thing
You know what,
you
we're looking to staff that, obviously, like a courthouse, part-time
Oh, you know
deputies.
what?
But from 8 to 8,
Yeah.
Monday through Sunday?
No,
How about just on paper,
because
22?
we don't yet know how weekends will be going,
Okay.
but we may have to do it Sunday, 7 days a week, you're right.
So you're
These are for
talking-
people who are still coming in, and then like attorneys or preachers.
Absolutely.
You're
That's
talking
what I
like
thought.
2.5
Yeah.
16
full-time.
here.
Yeah.
plus
These
22.
are,
Yeah.
this is
Even though
all
it's with
funded.
part-time people.
That's
Well,
right.
That's
You're-
why I
no,
said
you're
I
right.
added
It-
them
it
all
is
up
what it
when it
is.
comes to 40. How
But the-
much is funded already?
What
So
we
the
hope
16.
to really experience
Okay.
is the 70
So these are the
to
only ones that are
100
funded,
people we
'cause I
have
thought
on
he said-
weekends,
Plus the
So
ones
to
that
start to really cut that down.
Yeah.
earlier in the
Because
packet.
all the
Yeah.
work of putting cash on the books and all the work that goes on with that, that'll be done through the kiosk,
So
that'll be
that's
done
17 that are
remotely.
funded.
Yeah.
out of
We
the
couldn't
40.
It
give you
should
an
come
answer.
down a
Because
lot,
he didn't put the
hopefully.
maintenance
hope-
on there, but I
Yeah.
did count
Especially
the
when the
maintenance
weather
person.
turns
You don't
bad,
need a maintenance person.
Right.
people will, I think, take advantage of paying the $7 fee to visit for half an hour
For 20
versus
periods
coming
on
and
Monday.
waiting for hours until they have the opportunity
Yeah, to see somebody, yeah.
And you're saying CCW would buy the scanner, but it would not fund the.
Right, it does not have the money.
So I've got, go ahead,
We already have the money, we already pay the CCW employees from there.
but they wouldn't be the guards.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So I've got 26 positions plus the 2.5 to guard the building plus one maintenance.
Right, and as things.
On top of the 15 prior, that we prior.
And on, there may be a law that changes in Ohio that the CCW process totally goes away. So we don't know that. We don't know what the General Assembly will do. So, yeah, I would have to say it's more like, I think in the, right around 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that gives you a full picture of what, and this is anticipated at some point in time next year, our last meeting, construction meeting, it was stated by the one Granger executive who was there, we're looking at the, because of the, we just went through the punch list a couple weeks ago, or final punch list. There's still a couple of things, lights and things that have come up that we didn't realize,
I
emergency
think
lights.
they got the lights all done.
They got the other lights were not working, the emergency lights were not
Right,
working.
the night lights, I
Night
call them the
lights.
night lights, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah.
So these things happen, but now they're basically into phase 2. And they've been in parts of phase 2 for, about a month when they took down the main hallway ceiling and we're running more wire. So mid-time next year, that facility is going to be open, running, and with all the warrants, the 2,000 criminal warrants in the courts, our estimation is you're going to look at 400 inmates very soon, possibly by the end of 2020.
You know how depressing that is, Pete?
I'm not, my job's not to make you happy.
We hope we're wrong about all that.
We hope it's a more gradual increase, but the courts, our main customer, are going to know it's open. So, the cost. Last thing that I didn't mention, and I forgot to put in, Ron gave me, the food should increase and the medical by about $30,000.
That's for 2019.
We don't know.
If you remember back in May, when we were talking about funds for 19, you said you'll address those later. Roughly 30,000 for each of them.
I apologize.
Oh, for each,
Yeah,
that's
for each.
60,000.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That'll be matched at the end of the year, whatever it comes in at.
Okay,
But we just want to let you know about it.
sure.
So that gives you kind of a bare bones overview. And again, with the idea that we're into looking through 2020,
Sure.
this is what we're looking at.
Did you get to around 27 positions?
I got 23 unfunded. There were 40 counting a maintenance person, 1 dedicated maintenance, and then 17 are funded. That's what I got. Now, the cars, that's another,
I took that out.
yeah,
I just was adding the columns.
yeah.
I had 27, but I mean.
We'll go over
I know
this.
it was about 20 and we,
I had
Well,
26
closer to-
plus the maintenance plus the 2.5 for the guard.
Yeah, we need to get together so we
The
each
vestibule.
have the same
Yeah, the
page.
vestibule.
We can go through it again.
Yeah.
fine-tune.
yeah, we'll fine tune it.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a rough, a first blush.
Okay.
But to let you see what we are looking at.
Questions?
I have a question, if I may. How much is left of the sales tax money? Look, last article I read, it seemed like there was about $1 million left,
Todd, how much is left?
not allocated.
It's I mean, right now, there's $2.5 million in the fund. We're still expecting $5 million collected next year, $1.25 million. I mean, it's all estimates. But with the provision of what you plan on doing with the drug task force, it roughly is all committed right now.
That's what I thought.
So it's not spent, that's what,
But it's
the question is always confusing, how much money is there? You roughly have committed everything that
But
you
it's
feel is
earmarked for
gonna come
something.
to you.
Yeah,
That was my question.
yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you.
sure. Well, thanks for the info. Obviously, this is a lot to digest. And, ooh,
I wanted to break it down as easily
yeah.
as possible.
Do you have anything, Kathleen?
No, it's just,
Yeah, overwhelming.
yeah, and I mean, the amount of money,
Yeah.
is, you know, I don't know, collectively, I mean, what your thoughts are on where this revenue should come from and how, you know, what do you suggest saying to residents about a request or a projection of a increase of, let's say, 25 full-time employees in the department? Just thinking through, how do we collectively communicate that need and the costs associated with that need, with the revenue that we have as a county? I mean, what would your suggestion be to kind of tackle this together?
I look at it like this, Kathleen. You know, I think the first fiscal realities are always there, and we have to live with them. We understand that. But I think if we don't start from the position of advising the board what it takes to protect a county this size, to do the mandates, to respond to calls, to run a 400 person jail, and to do it in a professional, efficient manner, most efficient that we can as fiduciaries of the taxpayers. So our job is to first come up with a framework of what's required, and then within that, start to work, then look at the fiscal realities and where you know, what we can do and what we can't. We understand that. But unless we give what we think or what he needs to inform you to do his mandates, we can't do that. Obviously, the citizenry of Portage County, I see Portage County as kind of going into making a next step from a fairly rural county with pockets of like Kent State and Neomed and so on, coming into a new stage. And the threats that I've seen in my time will be coming to this county. I know threats that are in this county that I can't talk about, that I've seen in my experience, that are here. And they have connections to some very specific events in this country's history. So something's going to be, and if the citizenry wants a very professional sheriff's office to cover the areas, part of that may be, and I think it's been discussed, you have areas in the county that are protected, but those areas kind of get, I don't want to use the word free, but they are protected by the sheriffs. And today there's a lot of agreements between townships with the sheriff to carry that cost. And so that's something, you talk about a revenue stream, that's one thing that can be looked at. So that improves the response times. If the townships want that, they'll have those dedicated people in those townships to respond quicker. Otherwise, with the number of cars we have, we may be going from the northwest side all the way down to, Atwater and so on. I mean, these are the realities. A county like this should have really a north and a south post to respond to calls as efficiently and quickly as possible. We don't have those funds to have those outposts, things of that nature. But
I think collectively, we need to inform the public the need for it. We are not the only county facing this issue.
Right.
It's across the state. And we cannot run that organization without resources and people. It's that simple.
Do you think when we talk about the expanded jail and the thought that the increased capacity will quickly be used up, are there things that we can do to work to?
keep that down.
Exactly.
There is one thing, there is,
Because I would pledge to, and I'm sure Vicky as well, to work with you guys, to work with the courts, and our entire criminal justice system to not just say, okay, now that these beds are available,
We've got to
Fill them up.
yeah.
understand we have obviously the 2,000 warrants, okay? You're gonna have to process those bodies. Not that all 2,000 are gonna be housed there. Things such as you're doing with the there's a lot that can be done to monitor people and so on, and they shouldn't be in jail, okay? Those are things that'll keep bodies out. But they have to be processed for a period through the jail, so they have to be handled. In addition, there are situations in the judicial system, in the whole process, where people are arrested on bond, and then the charges are dismissed, and they're re-indicted and arrested again and processed again. That's a lot of,
That's double work.
there's a lot of issues there that can reduce our, especially on the weekends when those indictments come out. So the simple objective is the less we have to handle bodies, the number of bodies, the less resources it takes. And I hope I'm wrong.
And
I hope I'm
perhaps
wrong.
less capacity
Right.
it takes too.
Right.
We're not-
Right. I really do. I hope I'm wrong, but we would be not doing our due diligence if we didn't present what I think, and this is not just a jail, this is the entire county picture for the mandates.
Well, I'll say too, that I appreciate the work that is being done on the capacity issues, and it seems like there has been some progress there, and I just hope that, we can build on that and continue those discussions and that effort to try to
The other thing is,
streamline and make these processes, continue to think of ways to deal with capacity
I would.
issues.
And-
Which I
and
feel like
I've-
you've
I've
been
said this
doing.
before. I am not excited about a new jail at all.
Right.
I didn't want that in the first place. But I think part of the realistic problem is with this epidemic that we have going on, until we start to see people getting rehabilitated and some programs out there that are working, and those numbers begin to, the recidivism rate begins to decline a little bit.
right,
I don't know. I don't have the answer for that.
we have
I
far
do
too many
think that,
ads.
and we are certainly on board with working with you to see what can be done as far as not keeping inmates, but I have to tell you that when you're in that place daily and you see the same faces coming in and out of there, like there was a revolving door on the place, it just gets frustrating.
Yeah.
And Kathleen, I mean, we're coming into winter, and some of our customers, they will willingly commit crimes
To get in jail.
to get in jail. And the jail ends up handling all that society doesn't want to handle. That's where they end up.
Homelessness.
So
Really,
your numbers are higher in the winter than in the summer?
depending upon the type of customer.
Overall?
Not overall.
Not overall, no.
Okay.
No, but we,
But it's a different
But-
problem to
yeah.
manage, for sure.
Yeah.
for the summertime, those same customers, they'll do things to stay out necessarily. Yeah, so we know that we have far too many people who are addicts who really do not belong in
Belong there.
jail, okay? Jail is not a place for people who have substance abuse problems. They meet more people who can provide them in jail, those things, and when they get out, it's a continuous circle. We have to break that circle, and there are a few programs that you know that, and we hope that programs like Hope Village and monies, but we don't have enough experience.
It's time.
It's time to do
It's
this.
time.
And we have to catch them before, when they're released, and before they get right back into that life. So it means those facilities for transportation that Hope Village is trying to vet housing, transportation, housing, medical.
Jobs.
Okay, all of those things that net so that they don't go right back to the environment that caused them to be there in the first place, or was played a part to that brought them there to the jail and through the criminal justice system. That's what has to be done. And I think we have to engage us and quantitatively see what kind of successes we're having as a return on investment. I mean, of the monies that are going there. We're trying to cover it with the commissary funds to give that a seed. And the county may see that there's success there and want to put funds there. So, hey, we're all, if those numbers can go there and reduce numbers here, that's a plus. That's a plus for the county.
What is your view on what can be done with the criminal justice system overall?
Well, overall, I mean, there are national and statewide issues at play and being discussed and reforms being talked about, that I think get at what Pete was just talking about, you know, dealing with a substance abuse epidemic in a different way than our country and our state have been dealing with it. Some strides have been made, but you know, there's a lot that still needs to be done. And getting to your point, I think a big difficulty that we've seen with large-scale reform like this is funding doesn't follow, you know, the substance of the policy. And then it leaves.
I've heard a lot of talk about it, but I haven't seen anybody put any money behind it.
Right, and, you know, exactly. So I think that we have, you know, on our end, you know, with some of the sales tax revenue, have worked at prevention and, you know, beefing up what's happening in our schools and trying to get at the root of the problem before a problem starts.
You know, there is, I think, a real, so the numbers for the Detective Bureau, and let's say a threat to our schools. We have officers at a number of schools that are SROs, and that's a great program. Those numbers are in there. They're included in the deputies. And so as funded, in fact, that's a good point, there are numbers in the deputies that are funded at SROs. So those are numbers that, you know, trying to put this together, there's too much information, and we can break that out and really put a pencil to it. But this county, and I think every county, and I think the place it belongs with the sheriff, is that part of the task force, detective bureau / detective bureau's duties or things that we're gonna have to look at is the task force model has been a great model in especially limiting threats to this country in the JTTF area, okay? Through intelligence, threats have been identified and have been taken out. The same thing with mass shooters should be employed. And the concept of under the sheriff, a task force of officers whose job is to try to develop intelligence. There's a big study that was done by Secret Service regarding mass shooters and the fact that much data was out there before they acted as to their intent and what they were going to do. And I believe with the task force concept can have a great deal of success trying to identify these threats, limiting these threats. And the question is, how do you fund that? Possible that the state assembly could look at is each county's gun transactions. There's a small tax that funds that task force. Funds for those deputies to, who knows the county better than the sheriff and his deputies, to go out, identify, interdict, confront potential threats, to limit these threats. That's what JTTF does. That's what I did as part of my duties. We would identify these people. We would try to get intelligence, and we would watch them, and we would do things that we do to limit these threats. The same concept probably has to be brought to mass shooter problem. And I think there's a vehicle to do that, funding-wise, the transaction of guns. Don't go at it the Second Amendment. Go at it by the improper use of the weapon for mass casualties and identify those risks. That's what they do.
You know, Pete, it seems like there's so much argument over this drug problem, the gun issue, but really when you look at it, people don't disagree. They think they do. But when you look at it, it's like when we first did this sales tax, you know, we got some criticism because more wasn't going into prevention, because that is the root of the problem. However, we did put some there, but we have to address the fire.
Yeah.
What's going on right now.
Otherwise, the fire's going to take
right.
over.
So money had to be put there, and
Mm-hmm.
I think people just don't quite put that together. They didn't want a new jail, some of them. They wanted to put it all in prevention. Well, and when I would talk to people, I would say, I agree with you 100%. Prevention, our children, that's what need. However, we've got this fire going on, and the sheriff needs help.
You know, the funds, you're going to need the funds. You built this facility, you're going to need funds to operate in the future.
Keep it going.
And I got to tell you, I know this from the sheriff. I understand that you had hearings, you had mandated hearings you had to have. And I understand that nobody came to voice their opinion against it, which means the only conclusion you can take is they must have been for it, if they didn't come out and voice against it.
And I think most people
residents see
probably
that.
were, but we hear from the folks that don't. Yeah.
They are much louder than the folks
Right.
that are for it.
Right. So this has been agony for years now. I mean, it seems like it kind of popped up and just spread like a fire, you
Yeah.
know?
And again, we're not the only county.
Oh, I know
facing
that,
it.
Dave.
I talked to the sheriff in Summit a couple of weeks ago about this very issue, and it's the same thing. But the liability is out there when we don't act, and
Right.
what I'm desperately trying to accomplish is to keep the county out of liability.
Right.
Keep the inmates and staff safe and what have you, and the public as well. And it takes resources to do that, and unfortunately, I hear a lot of talk at the state level, but
But no money.
I'm not seeing any funding coming our way.
Both of you have to understand that the carfentanil problem that is in this county comes directly from across the vast ocean from China. okay? It's not manufactured here. It's not, it comes from Mexico. Well, yes, legally it can be, and it is used for medical purposes and surgeries, but not in the amounts that are being trafficked. And it is a international issue that China wants to traffic as much as they can here to degrade our culture. It's that simple. It is an international issue. It is a clear and present threat to our society.
I have one kind of final question, and I know we have another hearing and don't want to take your entire day. Is the staffing now in the department at a high? Is there a historical time when it was higher? I mean, where are we kind of looking?
Are you talking about before the facility was built? Because we're talking about apples and oranges.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
we really
good
are.
point.
I mean, understand right now, the county does not have a dedicated detective bureau to investigate those serious crimes that occur day in and day out.
For the non-correction officer positions, the staffing that you're talking about.
Non-correctional meaning,
The
you're
deputies,
talking about road patrol, you're talking about court security.
I'm talking about any of these other
Take deputies,
requested
take the
staffing
deputies.
Okay.
versus present staffing minus the
We'll
correction.
try to put something together for you.
yeah, I'll look at it historically. I think we did something like that last year.
Okay.
And I can do it, sure,
Then
we
you'll
can
do
do
it
it.
then,
Yeah.
good deal. But yeah, that
We'll try to do
would,
that.
just a historical
Absolutely.
perspective.
And to your
on
other
where-
point, I honestly think that collectively, we should try to educate the public about, you know, the problems that we have and the resources. Because in 400 days, somebody else is gonna have to deal with this issue, there's gonna be another administration there, and this isn't gonna go away. It's not. I foresee off in the future, those funding issues are gonna be there, and the board's gonna have to deal with them, and new administration there. But we'll work with you.
Sounds good.
Okay? Anything else?
Yeah, I will do this, we'll do the historical
This
analysis.
discussion.
Thank you.
Hopefully you have something, Pete, you don't have to read.
No, yeah, I got it replowed
Oh, okay.
around. Yeah, it's not, we don't have this laying
Are
around.
you happy to do this afternoon?
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't.
That's why I said, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
Yes, another. Do you have another one of these?
I'm going
Yeah, I
back
have a-
downstairs, so I'll get, talk, I'll get right on.
I had borrowed hers.
See what I can figure out, find out, investigate.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Taxes been paid.
Yeah, it's in that same folder as the other day.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
2019.
I was thinking it that way.
Mr. Klein, how are you?
How you doing? Good.
It didn't necessarily, wasn't said, but. All right. I'm going back downstairs, see what I can, if I can get the TVs hooked up for the next one. For some strange reason, Bob Simsack said they could come up to the radio system or something. I'm like, I have
Thanks,
no idea how
Joanne.
you're, you know, working out that
Thanks for
little
sticking
file.
around.
Pardon me?
Thanks for sticking around.
No problem, I'll see you this afternoon. Hi.
Hi, Chris.
I think it's a budget 2020. Yes. No, that's PDF. I think I'm using some. Need a budget presentation. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
You too.
Nice to see warm.
Someone's been sitting there quite a while.
Yeah.
They're all three warm right now.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah,
It's a hard situation.
it is. Well, you've got a hard situation too. I think about this airport a lot.
Yeah.
What's this one?
Okay, thanks, Amy. It's even got a pointer, that's good.
Oh, yeah. All right, okay. Let's do it. How you
Commissioner
doing?
Klein, how you doing? I mean, Commissioner Clyde, that's right.
Clyde.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk today about what the airport budget looks like. Typically, what we do is we look at where we were for the current year and see what variations there are in that. So one thing you'll see is on this one, this is for the revenue for the fuel flow, and that's affected by the tank damage we had. I mean, there was a couple months there where we hardly sold anything. So I've budgeted or looked at this year and figured we're going to be about 25% low for the year as far as revenue there, and that amounts to about $3,375 that will be under budget this year, meaning our revenue is going to be under that much. So we're going to be about $132,000 in projected revenue this year.
What about that FBO, is that fuel budget something?
Fixed
That is
base
FBO?
operator.
What
Yeah,
is it?
fixed base operator.
Okay,
That's the basically the building there that Dick Bonner operates for us
Okay.
and everything there. That's the one at the top is what the commissioners supply for Metro Life Flight, and the other comes directly as 20 cents a gallon off the fuel that Dick sells. And then looking at expenses for this year, we talked the other day about the tank repair, and that's two things here. There's a rental of the equipment that's there temporarily, and just the cost that we've incurred so far with putting up that temporary solution and fencing around it and all the ancillary things there. So that's about $12,000 over budget that we hadn't planned. Grounds-wise, we have $6,200 in there that we're over budget. We're just getting to the point this year where we're seeing some things that we've just put off and put off and put off, and they've bit us. We had a severe a leak in a couple hangars, and it cost us, I think, about $3,000 to patch a roof, just a section, and that's not much of a patch, $3,000 in the roof. We also had some problems with the electronic gates there that limit access. The one just quit working, and we had to block it open. The other one that leads right to the runway from the FBO had a motor that went bad on it, so those things have all amounted to some expenses there. Oh, we also had a utility pole. One has been there, I guess, since the airport's almost started, and it broke off, and we had to replace it. It carried some wires power wires to the buildings. Other expenses here, we had about $2,000 to the board hangars that we rent, T hangars to people. We had some doors. People had their airplanes in a couple hangars and they couldn't get the doors open. One was a broken cable. The other one was a bigger problem with the way it was attached to the structure of the building. That a place had cracked, and that had some major repairs on both of those things. We had projected $7,000 in maintenance on our equipment there. We're thinking that we're only going to have about $4,000, and that still leaves us with another $1,500 to spend this year, so we'll be under their budget. Pavement maintenance, we didn't do pavement maintenance. We had budgeted $10,000 in pavement maintenance this year. What we're going to do is limited. We're going to do $1,200 in crack seal to the runway, and then the south taxiway has some bigger cracks that need sealed. That's going to take more effort. They're going to have to be partly filled as well as sealed. So there, with our budget of $10,000 and these expenses about $7,700, we'll be under budget there, $2,300. So the total is about $16,000 over budget. The budget was $134,000. So $150,000. So that $150,000 minus the 32, I think, on the revenue puts us under budget, or I mean, under, at a loss of $18,000. There we go. So we had cash on hand at the start of the year, $43,000. So we're projecting that'll drop down to about $25,000 cash on hand at the end of the year. We need, next year we need $3,500 for matching funds for that taxiway move that's gonna occur. And that would put then, if we had a break even in 2020, it would put us about $21,000 in our general revenue fund. If I take a minute just to talk about the PACA parcels, you know, we talked about that a lot as far as they donated some land and how that affects us as far as matching funds for our FAA grants. There were 3 parcels valued about $35,000. We used some of that already for the local match and the property acquisition and the surveyor's expenses and all those kind of things. And we've got $3,500 that have to be used, will be used next year for the design of that taxiway. So that leaves $24,000 available for local match going forward. For the main construction of that runway, or taxiway rather, we need about $40,000 in matching funds. So that means we've got to come up with another $16,000 there to do that north taxiway. I gotta find the sweet spot. There it is. Oops. Okay, so then looking at the budget. So those were the changes. This first part here with the I think I went too far even. Okay, revenues. So let's see here. This basically shows the 2019 budget and what we're projecting for the 2020 budget, and then this is the highlights the difference. We're doing some moves here. We have a couple standalone hangars on the north side. One that we're renting right now that we're going to change that from that person renting it. That hangar has an apron in front of it that you can use to store an airplane. The other hangar, board hangar 2, the apron in front of that is deteriorated. It's concrete and it's just loose gravel all over the place, and you really couldn't park an airplane in there and have the, you know, anywhere near having an engine run in that area. It would just kick up too much debris and stuff to use it. So we're moving one tenant. We're moving a tenant. We use one hangar to store our snowplow equipment, mowing equipment, and that's in the hangar that has a good apron in it right now. So we're going to move that to the hangar that doesn't have the good apron in it, and then fix up that hangar that has the good apron and rent that out. That's what all that those 2 lines there with the 4 months and the 8 months. So we're going to be able to rent that new hangar for $800 a month. It's going to cost some money here because we have some plumbing to fix up in that. It's going to need a lift station to get rid of the waste. So there's going to be some expenses there. Going forward, we're looking at maybe doing some of that in conjunction with the new renter, whoever we might get in there, be able to work some kind of an agreement. Maybe they pay less rent and pay part of this construction going forward. But that's just part of what we're looking for next year. Another decrease in the revenue is this line here where it says the castle hangars. The issue on that, $5,400 less revenue in 2020 as 2019. The rent was behind in 2018.
Oh, so they're catching
So
up.
we budgeted it for 2019, but we're going to be back on budget. He's caught up with his rent, and so we're good right now as of that rent goes. So that did make a difference as far as the 2 budget goes. Let me slip to the next page here. Nothing really too much difference on these expenses. I'm sorry, I got off another line here. Fees. Yeah. Okay, expenses, nothing much on this one, pretty much the same. on the maintenance and repairs. We spent, I'm just gonna hit some of the highlights here. The $10,000 on grounds, again, that was, we had a utility pole gates, we did some cold patch on Nanway, amounting to about $10,000 this year. The airport gets an inspection every so often. We had an inspection maybe 3 years ago, and we had another inspection this year, early in the year, and nothing was addressed that was in the first inspection. The letter goes to the FBO manager, and nothing has been done. And so we've got this long list of things that we need to do to be in compliance with that inspection. And the reason we need to be in compliance with that inspection is to get funding from the state, ODOT, as far as our building improvements, runways, taxiways, any kind of improvement
Homer,
goes.
since nothing was done, did that affect your funding with the state already, or?
Well, it did a few years ago.
Okay.
We had something initially, we were trying to get funds from the state. When we did the runway, we were trying to do the taxiway, or Nanway Boulevard at the same time.
Mhm.
And I think what was planned at that point, if my memory serves me right, was that ODOT was going to contribute to the runway, and the FAA was going to help us with Nanway. ODOT dropped out at the last minute, so we had to go with the runway that FAA funded, not Nanway. And that one of the big things there was that we had no pavement maintenance program at that point. So we lost that opportunity with the state due to that. And going forward in this list, which is sort of, I've got like 24 items this guy's put on this list as far as stuff to repair. Some of it's minor. There was a couple signs that had to be taken down because they weren't on the right kind of posts. The posts weren't breakaway posts. So we had a couple things. Didn't make any difference there. The 2 signs, so we can remove those. But some of the other ones are going to require some contractors, maybe some construction work around drainage areas, things like that. So that's why we budgeted $10,000 in the coming year for that. Hangars, the same kind of thing. I got to put some money in there to repair leaks and doors, because it's just going to happen. It's just going to be putting finger in the dike a little bit. Tractor equipment, going to reduce the budget there a little bit based on this year by $2,000. And again, on pavement maintenance, the very last item in there, our airport engineer tells us that the state has a formula basically for how much maintenance we put into it. Luckily, it's not too bad. It's like, it amounts to about $3,400 a year we have to do in maintenance. And that mainly, I guess, is going to be crack repair that we're going to do. So we're going to do that, try to get some of that done even this year for a first time, and then going forward, try and do that on an ongoing basis. We've got an intern that we've worked, just part-time intern during the summer, to help us out with some of the other things we've been doing. We've been doing some painting and some repairs around the hangars, and just so just gives us another person to do that. So that's helped us out with that, working with one of our board members who's a volunteer on that. So we've got a little bit in there for an intern, and so that puts our general at the bottom line there. Gives us a profit and loss for the year of a minus $13,000 based on these numbers going forward. I think I did something here. Oh, there we go. You get the view or the slideshow for me? I guess that's
Is this a total on here, the grounds and facilities? I mean, to make it right, or I didn't understand what that asset maintenance, grounds and facilities, because those are high numbers.
Yeah, I mean, those are things that we've just, like, for example, Can't get to that, sorry. There. Yeah, for example, like Nanway Boulevard, that's got some major work that needs to be done on it. Right now, we're just sort of patching it and going by year from year. The hangar maintenance, there's 3 hangars there that the roofs have been leaking for a long time, and in the past, we pretty much either ignored it or only patched some areas. This last year, we had to do a little bit more than normal. I guess, just to give you an idea, I mean, all this stuff is just sort of the things we've sort of ignored over the years and just haven't done. Board Hangar 2 is on the north side, and we rent that to a business, the paint shop there. Well, no, Board Hangar 2 is the one we're going to refit and then rent to a new tenant. The paint shop is the next one, and that's got some repairs we haven't done. Aprons, there hasn't been any maintenance to the aprons in a long time, and we're starting to see that in places such as in front of that one hangar that's bad. Got a little bit of matching funds we need. And the last item is our terminal, you know, the place where you put your credit card in when you scan at the pump. Well, we have one of those at the airport, and it is basically obsolete. They're going to stop supporting it. They aren't going to supply us with any spare parts or any software updates to it. So somewhere along the line, we've got to replace that, and that support really stops next year. So these are all things that we should do. I mean, they can be prioritized. Certainly the fuel terminal at the bottom one is going to be a hot one in front of us.
Can we get matching funds for any of this stuff? I mean, can we get funds if we have matching funds for any of this stuff?
I don't think anything of this.
Okay.
I mean, the Nanway Boulevard was maybe some potential on that. But one of the things we have with the FAA is that they won't give us funds for those kind of things until all the other, you know, the other pavement, the runway, and the taxiways are all up to snuff. So that taxiway on the north side, we've got to finish that project before they'd even consider contributing to that.
And where's that on here? Is that on here?
No, that would only be covered as part of that matching funds. That's
Okay.
that project we expect will be is in the process of being funded by the FAA. We've notified them, and it's in the works. It's in our capital improvement program with them.
Homer, just to reiterate, I know they've heard it before, but 4 years ago, the hangar blew down. They got a $80,000
Yes.
settlement. They've been spending that down. They got a $20,000 settlement last year. That's the money that's keeping them afloat.
So it's not revenue
No,
coming in?
it's the one-time splurges, and as you can see, we're coming up to zero balance next year. You know, that's almost 100,000 in one-time revenues,
Yeah.
and that's with the loan being waived,
Right.
$45,000 a year loan. So,
And that's
the picture's not pretty.
and that's been sort of I mean, even earlier than those, Todd, we had we leased some land to an oil company to, you know, for oil rights on it.
Mhm.
So that pumped in some revenue at that point years ago. That's probably maybe 8 or 10 years ago. And so it's always been those kind of things that sort of just kept us above water, you know, but without some of those things happening,
But in the meantime, some of these big projects are
Yeah.
falling further and further behind. I mean, even on the hangar repair, that's probably an optimistic number.
I mean, yeah, all these things have been just, I mean, our method of operation has been frugal. I mean, we haven't tried to, you know,
Oh, I
we knew we
understand
had limited funds, and so when a tenant would complain about there being leaking, you know, I hate to say it, but it sort of took a while for us to respond to that, because it just couldn't respond to every problem that we have out there without revenue. So.
On the real estate taxes,
Yeah.
are there's no exemption?
No.
That issue's been visited
We,
thoroughly.
yeah,
Yeah.
believe me, thoroughly.
In fact, there's some back taxes. I think, are you 3 years in now on the 10-year program for back taxes?
You're caught up, aren't you?
No. Well, we're still paying the penalty is included
Okay.
going forward, because we basically we're advised to stop paying taxes on those disputed properties that we have. The state ruled that we do owe taxes on them because the properties generate revenue. They're properties that we rent, and therefore they generate revenue, and so therefore they had to be taxed.
Sometimes the revenues don't even cover property taxes.
Right.
That is the ruling.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So, we're in the process of catching that up. But it is what it is.
We
yeah.
didn't get any penalties waived, Todd? I mean,
No, because it was deemed that they were owed, you know, that they were in the wrong then for not
Yeah.
having paid them was the logic of that. But they went on a 10-year payment, you know,
Yeah, right.
and I think we're 3 years in on that. I think this was the third
So the-
payment on that.
The reason is because there's tenants.
it's
Yes,
revenue producing.
there's private
Enterprise.
enterprise being generated on some of those parcels was the logic as to why we owe on those.
Okay, so the entire parcel then is,
Well, the airport's probably 8 or 9 parcels, maybe even more than that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think we're probably about 25
So,
parcels.
you know, some maybe are exempt, but there was a batch of disputed ones, and ultimately they lost that. And it was probably 5 years being disputed, so there was a bit
Oh,
of a
yeah.
back charge.
okay.
But it was appealed, and it was, you know, that was thoroughly looked at.
So operationally, the budget is somewhat, the revenue and the expenses are close.
Well, they're spending what they bring in.
Yeah.
They're not spending what they need to spend, which is why then you see this other big list
So
of
they're like
large
capital.
projects that are building up.
Right.
So maintenance on the hangar hasn't been done properly over the years, that's why now it's a huge repair bill rather than $5,000 a year, it's turning into $120,000 because for 15 years it hasn't been done. Does that make sense? Manway Boulevard, I mean, they're pouring gravel into the potholes, you know, I mean, it's not being resurfaced and those type of things that it needs. So they're spending what they have to keep what their priorities are to keep running. But they're probably not spending what they should be for an airport of its size and needs.
Are these leases competitive with the going rate of small regional airports? Are they low, are they high?
I think
Are they right on target?
for the condition of those hangars, the leases we have, especially on the T hangars, which generate the majority of the money, the $50,000 they're probably reasonable. There's some other hangars on the field that are owned by the FBO, and they are enclosed hangars. You know, they have a T hangar is basically a big open building, and the planes are just parked on each side and
You
tail
can
to tail.
walk and touch each one, there's nothing to stop you. It's like a
Okay.
big barn.
But the other hangar is that the FBO owns, each area is walled off to make it private and the person can do what they want. Those hangars probably rent for $350, $375 a month, a couple $100 more than what we rent the open T hangars for, with leaky roofs and bad doors and bad pavement
Well,
inside.
the cement, the one hangar on the one side has a crack that runs the whole building. Some people are using boards to get their planes up in and out of the hangar. Doesn't mean the crack is heaved that much. So again, could rents be higher if they were nice hangars? Yes. But it's hard to judge because of the condition they are in as to whether we're getting good rents or not out of them.
We raised rents probably maybe 3 years ago, a little bit, and we're probably due to raise them again, even considering those conditions. I mean, just cost of living goes up and prices go up, so. But that wouldn't be
No, that's.
not much.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate you putting this together for us.
Well, and we haven't really made an effort to do this before, I think, so this is maybe a first step to make you aware of what's going on there and work through it. Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Trade.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
See you, Tom.
Amy, we just have the one public comment.
Yes.
My comment is about, in regards to Supreme Court decision not too long ago. It was more Bratnall versus Bratnall, and basically what it said was that meetings have to be conducted so that the people there can understand what's going on. Okay, and in that regard, when I got to thinking about that and reading that, I saw these consent agendas. Well, the public cannot understand anything when a consent agenda is used, because what is really happening is that you're making decisions outside of the public view, and then you're just sort of announcing it. For like an example, most of these solid waste management meetings, the only thing that the public hears is a motion to approve a consent agenda. They have no idea what that entails, and so I'm just raising this as something you should be looking at. I know I'm going to be looking at it, but you may want to look back at the decision to use consent agendas and see whether that is compliant with the Open Meetings Act. And that's really all I have.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. We can recess now. IT should be coming like at 11:15.
Did you want to take?
Oh, we can take Kelly Jo. Yeah. And we don't have anything from her, right, Amy?
No, it's an exec session.
Right.
Hi, it's Amy. Hi, are you available to come up? Yeah, of course. Okay, bye. She's coming.
Pardon me?
You want to recess?
Yeah. She gets up here.